Hello, and welcome to another episode of Movies That Make Us. I'm Jake.
I'm Tracy.
And I'm Val.
And we're back together again.
Look at our heads.
We are back together.
It's been a minute. Well, we were together at FanX.
It is nice to be all back together. We were together at FanX. That's true.
Yes, so recording-wise. And Valerie, you are broadcasting remotely again.
Yes, I'm in LA. I think we all want to talk. We're so excited to actually be on a show together again. We all want to talk at the same time. I am taking a break. I'm taking my lunch break at LA Comic-Con so that we can talk about movies today. And yeah.
Very nice. Well, we're glad to have you, Val. Hopefully you're having fun in LA at LA Comic-Con and that everything's going smoothly with no issue.
Of course. I love my job. You know what the cool thing is? I got here and I got on site and there's people that I worked with from FantasyCon working with me here that are from Utah, and none of us knew that we were all going to be in the same place. So it was so fun to like see familiar faces, and yeah, it's really cool.
Fun.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I still say that's one of the best conventions I've ever been to.
The FantasyCon.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
You guys just did stuff that was so different that others don't, like blacksmithing. You had aerialists, you had like fire breathers. There was so much stuff going on. It was so cool.
We had to get so many permits. I don't think they've ever done. I had to get
that
permits,
part would be more difficult, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, because they'd never had like fire breathers in there. They'd never had, like you said, the metalsmiths doing their thing, and that requires fire. So we had to get like parameters of how many, like how far apart, like feet, like could people be from that, and you know, all of this stuff. And that's the stuff I love, is like, let's do something we haven't done. Let's figure out like what we need to do. And yeah, it takes a little bit longer, but like, why not? Why do the same old stuff, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why it still stands out as much as it does, is because of all of that. That was different and unique. It was very targeted toward fantasy, you know, and it just, for me, the convention just leans into that 100%, you know. It wasn't trying to be too many things at once, which was kind of cool. It was just really well done. So,
yeah. Thank you. I loved it. And I still see satchels everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah. What were you saying, Tracy?
There's a bit of a lag today. I was just going to say, speaking of things we didn't love, Valerie and I did not love Joker. So, Jake,
hate it as much as you did.
There was just nothing there. It's like, why is this movie being made other than the fact it made $1 billion? Like, it seemed like everybody was bored in it. It was slow. There was no energy. Yeah.
My review is that it was really good until it wasn't. I feel like the first half of the film, to me, was actually a really good idea, and there were a lot of things that I really appreciated. And then it's kind of like when you have a special effect in a movie that you think is really cool the first 2 times that you see it, and then once you see it again and again and again, it's not that cool anymore, and the point is not made anymore, right? It's not special. If we're all VIPs, is there any of VIP? Like, it's kind of like that mentality. And so there was a lot of stuff that I liked, but then they made those moments unspecial, and so then I was like, okay, well, now so it was really cool until it wasn't.
Yeah
It's not making
that makes sense.
A huge box office, so we'll see how it ends up, but it rumored upwards of $200 million to make this movie, not including marketing.
Wow.
So yeah, Warner Brothers, ouch.
It sounds like it's an example of you've got that, you know, kind of hit with that first movie that nobody really expected it to take off and be as good as it was, and now all the pressure's on in the sequel. And that's when everything goes wrong, is when you're making the movie because of pressure. And, we did a Ghostbusters panel at FanX, and that's what happened with Ghostbusters 2. Just all the pressure to make this a second hit, just like the first one.
Yeah. That's a good analogy.
It's different. So.
But we are going to talk about a really beautiful, really well-made, well-written, well-acted, cool movie from front to back movie today, which is going to be really nice.
Yes.
Yeah. It's definitely one of the best movies I've seen this year, and I'm trying to think what I would say needed to change in the movie, and I don't know that there's a whole lot that you can say, hey, this needed to be different, or they should have done it this way instead of that way.
I
it's
have my
enjoyable
opinion
from start to finish.
I also have Babe's opinion on what he wanted there to be more of, so we can talk about that in a little bit, just from like a different perspective, on somebody that doesn't usually watch animated movies unless I make him watch animated movies.
Yeah.
But for me, the one thing I loved, and let's just jump into it. We don't have a lot of banter going on, but we're going to talk about Wild Robot.
Yep.
And Wild Robot is this fantastic animated movie about a robot who gets dropped in the middle of the wilderness and has a specific programming that it has to finish a task because it's a robot and that's programming. But now you're in the middle of the wild where, yes, there are a lot of things that in a circular nature motion happen, but then there's a lot of things that just, are not logical, and it's wild, right? It's not like a robot would see it. And so it's kind of that ongoing conversation of, can robots have feelings? Can they reprogram themselves? We've seen movies kind of with this same sentiment for a long time, both live action and animated movies. But the one thing that I just really loved about this film, and then I'll shut up and let you guys add into, is that the camera angles of this animated movie felt like a live action film.
Yeah. The animation on this, visually this movie is stunning from start to finish. There are so many. The one scene that really stood out to me with the animation and the visuals was there's one part where she walks up to this tree that's just covered in butterflies, and then the robot puts her hand on the tree and all of the butterflies just fly past, and it just looked incredible. And I appreciated the animation style too. Like, they didn't try to make everything overly realistic, so it still looked animated in a lot of ways that way. But the scenery, the coloring, the lighting, all of it was just, it was amazing.
It almost had like a brushstroke watercolor feel to it almost. Whereas a lot of CG you get really sharp, and this was just very painterly. And so it like I'm with you, Jake. That shot with the butterflies, I'm like, make me a print of that and I will hang that on my wall. It is just so beautifully done.
And I loved, like, you have robot, she's standing on this overhang of the mountain looking off into the distance, and you have the camera come up and then sweep over and out, and I'm like, it was so beautiful, and the coloring that went as it changed and went up and out, and I just, like, I have chills right now. It was kind of like one of the scenes that I remember from Pocahontas that at the time I was like, that is so pretty, but this went like beyond that kind of nature moment, and it really did feel like, this live action scene where you're panning all the way up and then you're heading out, and it was just so beautiful. There was also a lot about the movie that I think was really smart. To have a film, you're smart when you have a film that has nostalgic moments that make you feel comfortable, like you have seen this before, but you're not quite sure what it's from. And there were a lot of moments in this film that reminded me of WALL-E and Baymax and Bambi and Over the
Mhm.
Hedge, and like all of these different things that I've seen before, but also there were so many things that I haven't seen before. But it's that being comfortable enough that then you allow yourself to kind of immerse into the story and into the film.
Yeah. And speaking of coloring, because I just saw it,
Yeah.
and today I took my dad, so this is on my mind. But the scene where the 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 robot has been where Roz has been captured, and the ship is flying away, and the animals are still on the island, and so you have the animals on the island. The fire is burning behind them. The forest is on fire. The ship is taken away, and the birds go chasing after the ship. And you have this beautiful blue from the night sky, and you have the birds flying into this blue, and then they have just a little tint of red on the back of their tails as they're flying away from the fire. And I'm just like, it's little details like that that just put this over the edge. It's so beautifully done. When she's trying to escape the ship, and the robots are firing lasers, and there's explosions, and it's reflecting off of her, and you get these blues and these reds and the yellow flash, and it was just, oh, it's so good.
And along with the visuals, you've got a great score in the background. Like, I felt like the music really added to the story in a positive way. And sometimes, a score can be understated, and it, you can take it or leave it, or it can be overstated and it just kind of takes over the whole movie. I love John Williams, but there are times where his score is louder than the action that's happening in the film. And for a lot of things that works. Here, I just felt like it was a good mix. It was just really well done. I don't know who did the score, but it was awesome.
There were some moments that, so the robot in the film is learning what it's like to be a parent, and just going from the task of trying to raise a living thing to the fact that raising a living thing is more than just feeding it, more than just making sure it can walk, making sure it can fly, whatever, and actually getting into the point where you love this living thing, you need to guide this living thing, and you see the robot really kind of change how she's feeling. And there's a moment that, as any caregiver, whether you're a parent, an aunt, an uncle, or a grandma, when the kid is like, I hate you, like they're so angry that they're like, like when it says you're not my mom, I was just like, my heart was broken, because you could actually feel the way that the robot felt. And I was just like, oh, like it's, when my kids never said out loud to me, to my face, like, I hate you. But I'm sure she's gone to her room and been like, I hate you.
Yes.
But like we all, as like caregivers of kids, have that moment where you just don't feel as cool anymore. Like they hit that age where they don't really need you, and they've discovered something about themselves that they're like, and I was just like, this is capturing a moment that, oh my gosh, just hit me right in the gut.
Jake, the composer is Chris Bowers. He has composed scores for Green Book, King Richard, The Color Purple. The Wild Robot was his first animated film. He's also worked on Bridgerton, Mrs. America, Dear White People, Why They See Us, and has performed and collaborated with Jay-Z, Kanye West, Alicia Keys. So not a bad,
It's very diverse
resume there. Yeah. So they said he started writing the score for this 2 days after the birth of his daughter, and spent 2 years writing the music. There's over 80 minutes of music in this movie. So there's a lot of almost the whole movie has music to it.
Yeah. Yeah, but it I don't know. The score really worked for me. When I watched it the second time, that was something that really stood out to me quite a bit. So
now,
and the other thing, go ahead, Tracy.
Go ahead, and then I have a question about your son. Go ahead.
Okay. And I just want to call out the voice acting in this was excellent. It's the kind of voice acting I like in an animated movie. We had big stars in it, but not to the point where you're more focused on the voice being that star. So, for example, Mater in Cars is 100% Larry the Cable Guy, and it's Larry the Cable Guy, and it's almost distracting. But in this, you've got Pedro Pascal, playing the fox. You've got I just had it all pulled
Matt
up
Berry
here.
is the beaver.
Lupita.
Matt Berry playing the beaver, and Roz is voiced by Lupita
So-
Nyong'o, who was
So-
in A Quiet Place Day One, and she's fantastic in this. And then the bear, I was shocked when we watched the
I
credits,
usually
and the
get-
bear was Mark Hamill. I'm like, yeah.
Once you know
And
Mark
so
Hamill, the
I
second
just
time,
thought that, okay, yeah, I guess that. But the first time I was like, oh, that's who did the voice of the bear. Not what I
Yeah.
was expecting at all. So didn't sound anything like the Joker from Batman the Animated Series.
Dang, holy cow. Oh my
Yeah, that would be
goodness.
weird. It would be weird.
I was asked, this is based on a book series, and your son has read the books. Now I've heard conflicting information. I've heard this is just based on the first book, and I've heard it takes bits and pieces from all three books. But I knew that Ben really liked it, and I've heard several people whose kids have read the book that they really like this too. So I wanted to see if you had any insight on that, having talked to Ben.
Yeah, so he's actually only read the first book. We have bought the second book for him, and then we ordered the third book, and it hasn't come yet. So he won't start the second book until the third book comes, because he doesn't want to have to wait after he's done reading the second book. So I don't
Good,
know.
smart.
When I asked him how it compared to the book, he said that it was just like the book. So I don't know. To an
Okay.
8-year-old, it seemed like it was. And I think it takes heavily from the first one. There may be bits and pieces from the second one, but I think in his mind, it was what he had read in the book.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even know
In
it was
his
a book
review-
series until
Yeah. We didn't know either until we saw it at the bookstore. We're like, oh, let's see if Ben will enjoy that book. So, but his quick review of the movie after we were done, before the movie, he told us that The Wild Robot was the greatest book he's ever read. He's like, it's just the best book. And it's his favorite, and he just loves it. And so when we went and saw the movie, when we were walking out, I said, so what did you think of the movie? He's like, yeah, it's the greatest movie I've ever seen. And I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, well, maybe Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse. He's like, and then he kind of paused for a second. He said, no, this one was better.
wow,
Wow.
And
high praise.
anyone who knows Ben and his love of Spider-Man, that is really a compliment to the movie.
That is
so
high praise. Yeah, I was talking to Saray at ABC4, and she took her two sons to it, one of who's a tween. And she said the tween said that gave me real emotions. And so she's like, when my kid is saying that he had emotions, when my almost teenage boy is saying that, that means that he really had emotions. And I'm like, that's very cool.
yeah,
I love
Jack
it.
went with us. Oh,
Well, go ahead.
to see
Go
it.
ahead.
Jack went with us to see it with Ben, and he was really funny afterward. He's like, yeah. I said, what did you think of it? And he said, it was really good. It's a really good, fish out of water kind of story and finding yourself and things like that. And I'm like, wow, he talks really deeply about stuff sometimes. It's kind of funny. So
That's
but
cool.
he liked it.
Yeah, I love it when kids really have a big connection to art, whether it is a
Mhm.
book or a film. And because that's why we talk about this, right? It's these movies or these stories that leave that connection or build a connection or leave that mark on our lives. And I think we all remember as a kid having, a movie or a book that has been with us forever, right? And we knew we loved it from the minute we read it. And
Mhm.
so that
Mhm.
makes me really happy. That's so cool. It's why I love this medium so much.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, and we were all at the screening together, and it's sometimes we've been to screenings where it's for kids, and you can tell that the kids aren't that interested into it. They get very fidgety. They're running up and down the stairs. They're kind of talking. And there were parts in this one where you could hear a pin drop. And I had not experienced that since I saw Wall-E in the theater. When we saw Wall-E in the theater opening night, that's how the kids were just riveted. And that's how I felt this one was too. And I noticed too, a bunch of the kids wanted to give their thoughts to the reviewers outside in the hall, and they were getting animated. Like the kids were like getting very excited, because sometimes you'll see them and they'll be like, "Yeah, it was okay." Like after I saw Despicable Me, 3 or whatever Despicable
4.
Me just came out,
Yeah.
4, the
27.
kids were like, "Yeah, it was okay," and that's all the kids were. But on this one, the kids were like, "And then this happened, and then this happened, and then I loved this," and that is so much fun to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Now, Mal, you teased this earlier. What did Babe think of the wild robot?
So he did he liked the film, but he felt like they didn't spend enough time on the robot character really putting that time into how they brought in themselves from being a robot to more of a parent, and just kind of bridging that gap. Is it does kind of come in fast at the end, right? Is that all of a sudden the robot has feelings, and like we kind of see it along the way, but it's like all of a sudden it's like, I feel this. So for me, I was okay with it. I thought it was perfect timing, and I think that is also something that I like about film, is that depending on what you have done in your life and where you are in your life, you're going to see something different in each story. And I've been a parent for a really long time, and so I see this story very different from somebody that's not a parent, or somebody that's going to be a parent, or somebody that just became a parent, or somebody that adopted a kid, or somebody like, it's just, there's so many different ways you could take this story and have these feelings about it. And sometimes you kind of take on like your own thing, right? And what's going on in your life. And so I felt like it was the adequate amount of time, and I kind of saw it progressing as I go. And Dave just wanted more of that story, like showing that they were really putting the time in to be a parent, where there was kind of like more of these like montages of it, and it kind of moved fairly quickly into like a teenage state, right? So yeah.
Yeah, he does go from being a duckling to being a goose child fairly quickly. Yeah.
Well, but
yeah, I was okay with that. I didn't feel it was too rushed, but
and they talk about it when he's hatched, and the possum mom, who Catherine O'Hara played her, and she was one of my favorite characters, and her kids were like, I mean, that's yeah. Being close to death makes you feel more alive.
When they're telling each other how they died, and the mom's like, "I keep telling you kids, dead people don't describe how they die."
Yeah, you don't have to give a reason. You just have to be dead.
Like, scoliosis takes longer.
And the one. Yeah. But when the gosling is hatched, and the possum is explaining to Roz that he needs to learn how to swim, fly, or he needs to eat, learn how to swim, and learn how to fly before fall, because he's got to be able to migrate. And so it does seem fast, but I think it was only a matter of months that he was full grown enough to be able to fly.
Well, and I think as a parent too, is that it feels fast. Like Sammy's 23 this month. Like, how the heck did that happen? Like take the time that you have, because as soon as you blink, your kids are doing their own thing, right? And and it's just, it goes by so quickly. And so to me, that's why it felt normal, because I do feel like it's gone by so quickly as a parent. And there was also just so much humor. Like, as much as there was heart in this film, so much heart, there was so much great humor. Like, at one point, one of the possum kids, we think that they've died, which to me was like so funny, because you wouldn't see that in a film. Like, all of a sudden you hear like maybe this possum kid dies, and the mom's like, and then the kid comes back, and
she's
then
like, "I had 6 kids, 5."
Yeah,
Very natural.
5. Like, it's okay, Mom, I'm okay. Yeah, and Val, like you said, just oh. And I'm like, yeah, as a parent, I know that feeling very, very well. Like, I love my kids. I don't want anything to happen to them at all. But just that, like, sometimes you just need a break. A little bit of a break is okay. So,
well, and this brings up a point that I wanted to talk about, is that I love the fact that this film does not talk down to children, because so many animated films do. And this film has a real sense of danger, because from the beginning, when Roz picks up the crab and says, "Do you need assistance?" and a bird comes down and snatches it and takes off, and she's like, "Okay." And then the elk bats her, and the raccoons are just ransacking her, and she's like, "I'm detecting aggression." And the fox talks about this a lot. Fink talks about this, about how this is an environment where these creatures will kill each other and eat each other, and that's just the circle of life, and how it is. And they don't shy away from that. We have I just saw it today and I should remember, but Bill Nighy's Elder Goose character, spoiler, dies during the migration.
Spoiled quite a bit already.
I know, but yeah, but when we're talking death, that might go to another level. But they come back and they're like, in other movies they just would have escaped, and in this one you have that sacrifice so that the group could get away, and they don't. And even the ending where Roz is like, "I have to turn myself in because they're just going to keep coming, and I will come back to you." And she says the line, something like, "This is my migration, and when I am ready, I will come back." And those types of things you don't typically see. Like, that's some pretty heavy thematic work there that they're bringing to a kid's animated movie, which I think is fantastic.
Did anybody notice that the least realistic animated character in the film was the fox? Like, I feel like all of the other animated characters had so much detail to them, and then I feel like the fox felt more like the Fox and the Hound, but maybe even less detailed.
He had very
animation.
soft edges to him. Yeah.
Now I need to go watch it again because I don't know that I noticed that. So, darn, an excuse to go watch this one again.
Well, and I'm wondering if they did it on purpose, because he constantly felt like he didn't belong anywhere and that he was different from everyone, and that there wasn't another fox in the movie. And so maybe they specifically made him feel and look like he didn't quite fit with the rest of the animation because he didn't feel like he fit. Maybe, I don't know.
I like that.
That's an interesting thought. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. We've talked about it. This movie's got a lot of depth, and Jack calling it a fish out of water story, and I felt like it was about found family. And then now you brought up the AI issue and robot issue. Can they have feelings? Are they living? That kind of stuff. And there's just a lot of, and then finding your true self, where you belong, and deciding to belong where you belong. And just a lot of really good positive messages, even though, like you said, Tracy, there's danger in this movie. They lose people. They lose their home because it gets burned down, and it's not a happy fairy tale ending.
No. So there's some hope there, but it's not a fairy tale. Yeah.
There's hope. There's hope. Hope in a couple of ways. Hope that she does find a way back, and hope that they make a sequel to this movie and that it comes out like next week, because I would love to see the second one. Not next week. I want them to take the time that they need to make it really good. But
hopefully they've spent the last 2 years working on the sequel so they can surprise us.
Yeah. So, and I there was one moment on the depth part where they talk about how she killed Bright Bill's family, and it was an accident. She didn't mean to. That's the harsh reality of where they live, and things happen. And she tells him that she, was trying to protect him, and she didn't know how it would affect him. And he said, that wasn't your choice to make. And man, as a parent, as there are things where you have to make those split-second decisions all the time. Am I ready? Like, do I tell them this or do I wait because of how it might impact them? Or you're making choices that are going to impact your kids down the road. And like, I don't know if I make the right ones. Most of the time, I probably mess it up, and my kids are going to pay the price later, and we'll need to go to counseling and get it all figured out. It'll be fine. But it is hard. It is hard to be in that position. And I don't know that I blame Roz for not sharing. And I'd probably do the same thing. Like, you know what? He's just not ready. I'm going to wait.
Well, and Finn tells her very early on, don't say that in front of the kid. Like, he covers his ears and he's like, don't bring that up. So I think, and that was before she really started to develop all these feelings. And so that, I think, is going to be her fallback position. Like, oh, okay, he told me not to, so I won't. And then later has to realize, that did happen and I do need to account for it.
Yeah. I mean, to her credit, she was absolutely honest about it, right? Like, is it true? Did you kill my family? Yes. I mean, she doesn't hold back at all. So,
and Jake, I'm not a parent, but the line that killed me is when she says, when the possum says, he thinks you're his parent, and she says, I do not have the programming for that. And then she's like, well, no one does. And that to me was such a great line.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Because like, nobody gets a training book, right? Like, there's all these books out there on how to do this, but like, you're never going to be prepared because everyone's in a different situation. And no matter whether you're prepared or not to have a family, whatever that looks like to you, you're never going to know until you're in it. And even when you're in it, you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing right now.
What I'm doing here.
Yeah, it's true. And I think it, like you said, about whatever your family looks like, and I think it can apply to a lot of things in life. Becoming an adult, and I feel like that was just yesterday, but it was like 20 years ago. And seeing, like, as you're paying your bills and you're doing all these things, that like nobody really knows what they're doing. We're all just trying to figure it out. And gaining that understanding, I think, helps you to be more kind and understanding to everybody around you. But yeah, I felt that moment too. Like, nobody's got the programming for it.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah, that line. I'm like, I don't have kids, but that line, bravo.
Yeah.
And just, I'm with you, Jake, on the vocal acting. Is like, sometimes you'll see, especially when it comes to, it seems like Illumination is one of the worst in this regard. And sometimes DreamWorks will do it too, where it's like, it's gimmick voice casting, where they'll advertise the movie by like, here's the 8 actors who are doing voices in this movie. And Kevin Hart makes me laugh sometimes, but it's always Kevin Hart, right? But as we were saying, I didn't know this was Mark Hamill the first time through until I saw the credits. And now, having watched it again today, knowing that it was him, I'm like, okay, I can pick up little traces of it. But Pedro Pascal, Matt Berry, let me say this. Matt Berry is Matt Berry. There's no disguising his voice, but it worked for that character. But like Pedro Pascal, like, I could tell it was Pedro Pascal, but I wasn't thinking it was him. I was thinking, this is this fox. And he has some of the line delivery, which is so great. Like, when she digs him, or she comes back to power in the middle of the winter where the blizzard is happening. And the fox is inside the den, and she's like, why are you here? And he's like, oh, it was cold and it was deep. And she goes, are there any others out there? And he goes, yeah. And you can kind of see the wheels turning, like, I don't want to go back out there. She's going to make me go back out there. And so then, as they're gathering the animals, and then he digs up the one, and it's the skunk, I think. And the skunk is like, oh, look who it is. He's like, oh, sorry, this one's already dead. Too bad. I got something to sell again. And just, he was so delightful in this movie. I'm like, I just want to hang out with Pedro Pascal. Like, he seems like the coolest dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also loved the beaver. Like, the beaver was one of my favorite characters, and they finally meet him in the end. And I just, the beaver character, they're so detailed. You know
that is male bovine instrument.
Yeah. And all these side characters reminded me of like family members or friends that I feel like are my family. Like we all have that uncle who like, okay, just do your thing. And then at some point he's going to be useful, right? Like, it's just like, what? It's like,
Yep.
and I love how it's your family does look like whatever you need it to look like. You have this fox that comes into the picture, and you've got this robot, and you've got this goose, and then your neighbors are, this lady with 7 kids that like it's a family is whatever you need your family to be. And sometimes, it also
Yeah.
has a bear in it, and that's fine.
Uh-huh. Well, and I love the scene at the end when they're all in the shelter, and Roz is like, why are you guys acting like this? And Finn's is like, well, you brought a bunch of predators and their food. What do you expect them to do? And so then she says, and is her powers going down? And she's like, help them. And he's like, and so then he's like trying to get their attention, and then the possum goes, the jerk wants to speak. So then everything's quiet, and then but he delivers, and he's been this funny character for so much of the movie. But then he's like, you guys, the first one of us that goes out there is not going to make it. So we got one shot to get through this. We've all got to pull together, and everybody just needs to get along. And I'm thinking, man, what a great message for just humankind in general. Like, we've got one planet. This is all we've got. We all need to come together and figure this thing out, or we're all just screwed. And what a great message for this little kids movie. And then when they all, like, you have the one, shoot, I can't remember what the animals are, but he like opens his mouth and pulls out the animal that he ate, and then it opens its mouth out and pulls out the crab, and then the crab scuttles away. I was like,
that was probably the stinkiest house ever.
oh yeah.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. Can't even imagine.
Good things robots can't smell.
Although
Yeah.
she at times with the moss, the wooden club foot, I was like, Ross is probably, she's got some damage to her.
We're all damaged.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other shot.
We are.
Go ahead.
Hey, Tracy, the other shot.
Oh, I was just gonna say the other
I was
shot
just
that
gonna
I love.
say on the there's
We got
a
a
little
delay.
bit of a lag, I think, between Tracy. Yeah. Okay. So Val mentioning that we're all damaged, we're all broken. I think one of the parts that's just really powerful is when Universal Dynamics, or whatever the name of the company was, that created Roz, comes to retrieve Roz, and the robot that's interacting with her is like, no, we're going to take you back and we're going to fix you. And Roz doesn't want to go back and get fixed. And I think that there's something powerful there. We're all, quote unquote, damaged or broken, but that doesn't mean we need to be fixed. Not in the sense that we've got to go back to what we were before we were broken. There's nothing wrong with you. I don't know. It was just kind of a powerful thing.
Totally agree. Yeah, what I was going to say is just the sequence that I loved is when she first arrives on the island and can't speak to the animals, but she has to complete a task. That's her motivation. That's her programming. And so she starts to analyze the language, and she sits down, and you get the time lapse of the days and the nights going by and the animals moving. And as the dialogue bubbles pop up over the animals, you get little fragments. You get a bunch of squiggly nonsense, but then there's a letter, and then there's a few more letters. And then at the end, when she's been gone for a while and comes to, and she has this moss growing on her, I'm like, just the stuff like that was just so beautifully done to show the time lapse.
I agree.
It's like stories within stories within stories.
Oh yeah. This movie is like an ogre or an onion. It's just got lots of layers.
That was another DreamWorks reference. Well done.
Thank you. Well, should we go ahead and grade this movie? I have a feeling that this might go well. We'll see how it works out.
I'll go first. It's an 8 for me. It's absolutely cool.
Yeah. I'm in agreement. I wore my Up shirt today because Tracy, I think you mentioned that this is like top tier Pixar level, and Up is top tier Pixar, and so it's an A for me, maybe even an A plus.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jake, and with Valerie. Jake, when you said, and you said this coming out of the theater, you're like, I'm trying to think of something that I would nitpick, and I really can't think of anything. And I'm the same way. I was just as enchanted the second time as I was the first time. And when I say top tier Pixar, I'm with you. That's like Up. That's like the Toy Story series, Wall-E, Ratatouille, because Pixar has some okay stuff, but this to me felt
Cars
like
2.
that. Cars 2, definitely a high level Pixar, absolutely. But this to me, this just had the heart. It had the humor. It's entertaining for kids and adults. The animation is beautiful. This is probably my favorite film of the year. If it's going to be in my at least top 5, probably top 2 or 3 for the end of the year in terms of best film. But so far, it's my favorite film. Like, this is one really touched me, made me tear up in the theater, and I have no problems admitting that. I thought it was just absolutely beautiful. So it's an A, even A plus for me.
Yeah. If this doesn't win Best Animated Feature at like the Golden Globes and the Oscars this year, I'll be shocked. Honestly.
It's hard to say because I definitely think it's probably the best commercial animated movie of the year.
Yeah.
We always get surprised by some of those independent animated films, which I tell people don't sleep on those. Like, if you can find some independent animated films and some international animated films, they really are worth a watch because they, especially international, they just have this different perspective on things. And no, they may not be like this amazing high-tech animation, but sometimes it's this quirky, fun animation that really tells a story better than something that's super slick, right?
Right.
But yes, this is definitely so far the best animated movie I've seen this year, but I have not seen everything yet, and sometimes those independent ones kind of sneak in,
Yeah. And I agree with that 100%. I think we miss out on a lot of those. And you're right, Al. We need to be better about not sleeping on those and seeking them out. But this is a good one. Anyway.
Yes.
See it on the big screen. Don't wait till it streams.
Yes.
Like, it'll be streaming, but see it on the big screen.
Oh, we went when we went to the early screening. It was in the theater. It was really nice, but it wasn't like on IMAX or their biggest screen. When I took Ben and Jack, we went to the Cinemark near our house and we watched it on their XD screen, which is their IMAX type screen. And yes, the biggest screen you can find. It is worth your while to do that and watch this movie.
Yeah. And this was formatted for IMAX. So it's going to look great.
Yeah. Don't wait until it's streaming and then watch it on your tiny phone screen. No.
It'll smack that phone right out of your hand. No.
Elfin.
No.
Well, it's like when Bright Bill is training and the possum has to yell at him and give him some hard mother advice, give him some hard love from the mother. You get that rock and you get back up in the air.
Back up there.
You get that phone out of your hand.
Love it.
Speaking of tough love and preparing and training, Tracy and Val will be running half marathon and the 5K. Is that right? In February in Disneyland?
Yep. And I am behind
on
my training. No,
so am I.
I was doing real good until about a month and a half ago. And I got to get back up. I got to get back on it.
Same. But yeah, we're going out to Disneyland.
It's become an annual.
And running through.
Yeah. It makes a huge difference. It makes it a lot easier to be running through the parks and things like that. But as it's become an annual tradition for us on Movies That Make Us, we are raising money for the American Cancer Society. We have those links ready, so I will get them added to the description of this show, wherever you're listening to or watching it, so that if you can and are able and would like to, we would appreciate any donations to help reach our funding goal and to help fight cancer. I mean, that's what it's really all about. So It's something we do every year, and it's for a really good cause.
Yes. I'm excited. I just don't want to die.
You won't. You'll.
I won't die. I'll feel like it the next
No.
day. I'll be like, oh.
Yeah, and even
For
later that day
liability
when you're
reasons,
Liability.
for liability reasons, Disney will make sure that like you're taken away before you die, so that you don't die on their property. If they can help it, they like to avoid people dying on Disney property or at events. So, on
Just
that
'cause-
super happy note,
because somebody did pass away
Did
at the end
die
of
at the last run.
across the finish line and had a heart attack.
And
I
we
had
feel
no idea.
we feel so bad for him and his family.
Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I had no idea.
I know you didn't. I know you.
Why would
Yeah.
you? Why would you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like the worst person in the world right now, so I
But
apologize
you are not the
100%.
worst person in the world.
Oh, yeah. So, anyway, raising money to fight cancer.
Yeah,
It's an honest mistake.
and thank
Honest
you all
mistake.
for. I know, and it is, and man, foot and mouth, and I just heart goes out to that family.
All
That
good.
must be an awful
Yeah,
feeling,
for
and
sure.
so, thank you so much for listening, for watching, for all of your support, and until next time, we won't see you at the movies.
But you should go to the movies and see this.
This has been an Age of Geek media production.